So Diablo 4 has been announced to be coming out in 2023. And today we also get the Diablo 4 quarterly update for June 2022. And I'm very excited because the coverage of this specific article has everything to do with the Necromancer, which happens to be my favorite class and the class that I'm playing as in Diablo Immortals currently. And speaking of Diablo Immortals, they do begin the post with congratulating Diablo Immortals of its launch, which I'm sure that's I'm almost surprised they put this in here because there's been so much negativity around Diablo Immortals. I would almost think that they would have wanted to distance themselves from it, but we'll see. If you didn't catch other news, also there's going to be a bunch of microtransactions in Diablo 4, probably not as extreme as in the Diablo Immortals, but I know a lot of people are being pessimistic about the outlook on that. Me personally, I'm going to remain optimistic and hope it's I'm guessing it's going to be mild compared to Diablo Immortals. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Some of these areas I'm going to kind of give you a synopsis. Some of it I'm going to read word for word here to give you the full depth of information. Now, a lot of ways, if you have played the Necromancer in Diablo 2 or Diablo 3, then a lot of the features are going to feel very, very familiar to you. So obviously, they're going to be using corpses in a lot of their class features that come from enemies that are dead. And there's going to be also abilities and ways to create additional corpses, which is nice because of some abilities like Corpse Explosion. If there's no corpses to explode, that's not so good. They're also going to be having a resource cord essence, and this is something that gets charged up when you actually attack with your basic attacks. It's going to allow you to utilize your kind of spells and abilities more often. So there's that balance between using the basic attacks and the more powerful abilities. Now it looks like the equipment that the Necromancer is going to be using seems pretty in line with what I would expect. They can use swords, daggers, wands, focuses, and shields, and then especially scythes. So for those of you that don't know, there are going to be certain types of weapons that only certain classes can use. This is not a game where every class can use every type of weapon, so it's going to be much more limited, and certain classes will have specific unit weapon types that only they can use. Now, in addition to manipulating corpses, the class is going to be big about summoning different types of skeleton armies, golems. This goes all the way back to Diablo 2 as well. The Necromancer is also going to be big about curses. They're going to provide a variety of debuffs towards the enemies. And what's big about the playstyle here, as we're going to see, it's all about giving the options of how you want to play. Maybe you want to be big on pet armies. Maybe you want to lean into bone attacks or really lean into manipulating corpses. So we will take a look at those styles now. So let's see what they say about the bone style. So bone skills are relatively physical in nature, thus benefit more heavily from effects such as critical strike. These skills also benefit from having and spending large amounts of essence. Remember, essence is the resource that you get when you use basic attacks, as they have various effects that can cause each of their individual attacks to be even more powerful. Now, interesting how they're saying that because it's a physical type of attack, it benefits more from critical strike. I wonder if that means that non-physical attacks can't crit or benefit less. We'll have to see as we learn more. Now, Bone Spirit is back in Diablo 4 and now has a unique twist that exemplifies what bone skills are all about. Bone Spirit not only has a cooldown, but also consumes all essence the player currently has. Once cast, the Spirit of Bone is conjured, seeks out the nearest enemy. Upon reaching them, the spirit will explode, dealing high amounts of damage to the target and all other enemies in the area. So this is kind of like a fire and forget ability. The only downside is if you kind of miss target and you cast this on some weak enemy when you meant to cast it going towards a more powerful enemy. So that's the potential downside. Now it says the damage is increased by a certain percentage per point of essence spent, meaning that players who spend the max amount of essence will deal a significant amount of damage to the enemy's hit. The skill can also be upgraded so that when it critically strikes, its cooldown is significantly reduced, meaning that players who commit to generating lots of essence which, while also having a high critical strike chance, will get a lot of damage from the skill. So the idea here is probably ways to maximize how quickly you can generate essence. Stacking crit was going to be really big on this kind of focus. Now, another skill that Necromancers will have access to is Bone Prison. When a player casts Bone Prison, they slam their weapon to the ground, calling forth a circular wall of bone to surround its targeting enemy or area. Enemies cannot move through the space while the bone spirit persists, which makes it incredibly versatile, able to be combined with many other skills, even those that are not themed around bone. Bone Prison is great for blocking off hallways, trapping groups of enemies inside to set them up for AO attacks, or simply section off a group of enemies to deal with later while you handle higher priority targets. So good again for kind of crowd controlling an area. I'm very curious to see if in Diablo 4 there's going to be ways to modify skills to have them act differently, similar as in Diablo 3, so only time will tell. Now, the next playstyle I talk about is the Darkness playstyle, and it focuses on attacks that tend to be damage over time based or attack multiple times in a short window, with various benefits and rewards being granted for damaging enemies in this way. Darkness skills also tend to have various debuffs and crowd control elements so they can keep their enemies at bay while they die a slow, painful death. So it's all about, stacking dots on numerous enemies and just watch them whittle away. So not a burst DPS, more of a cost-effective damage over time build. Now, Decompose is a basic darkness skill that allows you to channel dark magic onto enemies, dealing damage onto them while also generating essence. Unlike other basic skills, Decompose also periodically summons corpses. So this is great again if you want to lean into a corpse build here, making it much easier to ensure you have a steady supply for summoning skeletons and blowing them up. Now, another darkness skill is called Blight. Blight launches a ball of dark energy into a direction. Upon hitting an enemy or expiring, it deals an explosion of dark or damage while leaving behind a defiled area, dealing periodic damage to enemies inside over time. Skill deals a high amount of damage to enemies who are standing in place, whether that's due to fighting your undead minions or to being contained via other skills like Bone Prison. So if there's ways that you can make sure enemies go through this defiled area, or if you're just fighting a bunch of enemies, maybe your pets are tanking them, this could be really, really good for burning down AoE packs of enemies. Now, next we have the Blood playstyle. So Necromancers can also use the power of blood magic to siphon the life from the enemies. Not only these skills tend to have defensive-oriented benefits, they also have many ways to turn that defense into offense for the player, empowering them and awarding them for having large amounts of max health as keeping their current health totals high. So you might see this quite a bit in PvP maybe as well, with that high survivability. Now, Blood Surge draws a small amount of blood from nearby enemies to the Necromancer that then expels a Blood Nova, dealing damage near the player's location. The damage of the Blood Nova is increased per enemy drained, which incentivizes you to be in the middle of a pack of enemies for maximum effect. So Necromancers can not only just be kind of ranged classes that, rely on their pets to be in the thick of it, but you could go blood build here and really, probably get a big old scythe and just really mail it up with some of the more traditional melee classes. Now, another blood skill is Blood Mist. Upon activation, Necromancer disperses into a bloody mist, becoming temporarily immune to all the damage while draining the life of any nearby enemy that they pass through. It's a universally powerful defensive skill that can give you time you need to regroup in those dire moments where you become overwhelmed. So this is nice because, again, it gets you out of dodge. You can move through enemies if you're getting in trouble, and it also acts as a heal. So again, this is something I could definitely see being useful for melee builds and also for PvP especially, I would think. And then, of course, we have the army. What Necromancer build would be without an option to have a bunch of summons? So as you would expect, Necromancers can summon the undead to do their bidding. Also allow players to specialize into empowering their army as much as possible, which includes various kinds of skeletons as well as classic golems. One advantage to this method of playing is that it can easily incorporate the benefits of bone, dark, or blood skills, allowing you to have a great deal of customization to how you want to interact with your army. So for an example, we believe it will be perfectly viable to have a player pursue a darkness-themed army, build Decompose as the basic skill to generate corpses, as there is an obvious synergy there. However, if the player wishes to generate corpses via other means, they can just as easily take a nostalgia trip to the year 2000 and just chuck bone spears at their enemies from a distance while opting for all the bone skill synergies that the Necromancer has to offer. So again, it definitely looks like they've thought ahead how the different playstyles are going to interact. I'm going to assume they're going to have different skill trees, one for each playstyle, and maybe you unlock different buffs and synergistic effects that will play together. I haven't seen anything on this yet, but it would kind of make sense. I went through a lot of iteration on how we want the experience of summoning the undead to feel for the player, and how much of their skill bar should be dedicated to the part of the class. To that end, we've come up with what we feel is the best possible version to ensure that players have as much customization as possible over not only their army itself, but as in which other skills they want to use to support their own unique playstyle. So if a player wants to have the maximum number of summoned units possible, then they will only have to dedicate 2 buttons to the skill bar. Interesting. One to raise skeletons and the other for the golem. The raise skeleton button is a one-stop shop to raise all the different skeletons players can summon, and the golem button is used to command the golem to use a unique effect that is dependent on the type of golem that is currently active. With this setup, we've found a great balance between having the necessary tools for raising the command a Necromancer army, while also leaving room for players to express in what additional skills they want to pursue on their bar. So while there's only 2 buttons really associated with the summons, the Book of the Dead that we're going to look at right now is going to kind of explain how you have different options when it comes to your different summons. So let's take a look at that. So here's the Book of the Dead, and you can kind of see the visual effect as they have right now. I doubt this is going to be final because this looks kind of old school. Almost looks like a Diablo 2 low-res shot. But it says Skeleton Warriors. They have the Skirmishers, it looks like, enabled. The Skeletal Mages have the Shadow Mages, and it's the Blood Golem. So I remember, there used to be a Clay Golem, Iron Golem, Blood Golem. I don't know if there was another one. I think there was 3 or 4. All right, so let's see what they say here. Cue the Book of the Dead, the Necromancer's unique class mechanic. Right from the moment you log in, you will start with an extra skill on your bar, Raise Skeleton. This button, you will immediately be able to raise undead warriors to fight by your side. In addition to this, you will have access to the Book of the Dead. This is a space where you can customize your army, or lack thereof, with increasing options as you level up. There are 3 customizable summons in the space: Skeleton Warriors, Skeletal Mages, and a Golem, as we just saw. Each summon also has one of 3 specializations that I can choose from. Example, Skeleton Warriors can be Skirmishers, Defenders, or Reapers. Skirmishers are more standard warriors but have increased damage and reduced health. Defenders have both health, and Reapers have slow attacks, dealing damage in AoE in front of them, and have a special wind-up attack that deals a high amount of damage. So it's going to be your burst AoE setup here. Interesting. So in addition, each specialized unit in the army has unique upgrades available to them, giving you even more customizations over how each unit in the army functions in their overall playstyle. These units and upgrades will have synergies with various playstyles mentioned above, as well as add other potential ways to play. So we can see here, we have the Skirmishers, and there's going to be upgrades you select. And it looks like you'll be able to pre-select them and then swap between them. So maybe you want Skirmishers for a while, then Defenders, or maybe Reapers. So interesting. In addition to all these customizations, we have also added the ability for players to sacrifice different components of their army for personal benefits. Oh, interesting. So if you want to go for a non-pet build. Next to each unit type in the Book of the Dead is an extra option to sacrifice the ability to summon that unit in exchange for a personal permanent buff. These buffs are carefully designed and placed so that players can mix and match, having none, some, or all the possible summon units while still having relevant options to enhance their build. So I wouldn't be surprised, it sounds like to me, if you have them disabled, they won't summon with the buttons and you'll have other abilities. But let's say you've unlocked your Skeletal Mages and Skeletal Warriors, hitting the button for the summon will summon, I'm guessing, your Skeleton Warriors and Skeletal Mages. And then the Golem is going to be always out, assuming he's alive, but then you can use a special ability. So I think that's how the 2 little buttons will work, it sounds like. Now they say, our goal of the system is that there should be something for everyone to be excited about. There are relevant, powerful options to choose from, whether players want to play with the full army, party army, or even those that wish to forgo the army completely and play solo. We had a blast playing the system so far. We were excited to see what various combinations that you'll come up with to push your Necromancers to the next level. I think I'm going to guess like if it's more PvP based, similar to Diablo Immortals, I'm seeing way less pet and summon interaction since their AI is pretty horrible. And then for PvE, I could definitely see a mix, but I mean, it's so classic to go with the summons. It's going to be hard to resist that. So they seem to be pretty excited about the Necromancer. I like what I'm seeing here. A lot of it is very similar to what we loved about the Necromancer in the past, but with kind of a unique design. I like the whole more in-depth customization for the summons. I think that's going to be great. But let me know, what are your thoughts? Are you excited about the Necromancer? Is this going to be the first class you're going to play in Diablo 4, and why? And if not, if you don't like this class, let me know as well. As always, guys, if you want to see more Diablo 4 content from me in the future, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when new videos from me drop. And as always, guys, thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you in the next video.